Hey guys, welcome back to another great game of CDH. With the recent elections happening in the States, we felt like we should do some voting of our own. Although a council's dilemma can feel just as rigged when Tivit grants an extra vote. But with 4 players on the ballot, it's still anyone's race to win. Also, if you like what you see, consider joining our Patreon, as with your help, we can keep producing the videos you enjoy. And if you want to play with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community that loves to talk MTG or whatever else strikes our fancy. And we would love to meet new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. Starting us off, we have English playing Grist. And normally you'd expect to see a Protean Hulk, but this build is instead Chatterfang Razaketh. It's still 12 Entomb Grist. It's a mid-range combo list that is really consistent, as it has a lot of duplicate card effects. And along with your commander, you can either mill your deck or downtick to remove problematic stax creatures. Overall, this is a really fun Golgari list. Next up is Hidden Planet X, supporting his candidate Tivit, Seller of Secrets. This is an Esper deck that carries a high density of win cons. Plus, having a 1-card combo in Time Sieve makes Tivit an ever-present threat, while functioning as a hard-to-interact with value engine in the meantime. In the third spot is EDH Senpai, bringing back Tasigur. This is a control combo list whose goal is to use Tasigur as a cheap creature to Eldritch Evolution away for either a Toxrill or a Hullbreak Horror. It has a lot of fast mana to help accelerate out a value engine such as a Sylvan Library or Rhystic Study. Then, along with a suite of counterspells and removal, controls the board. And bringing up the rear, we have Anthony on Tevesh Tana. This is another partner commander that's rarely seen. This is a Turbonaz Jund combo deck. Whether it's Underworld Breach, Witherbloom, or Dualcaster Mage, this deck's goal is to tutor early for combo pieces, while relying on Tevesh as a value engine to either draw cards or provide bodies to block, or more importantly, sack as a resource. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. English starts off with the command tower into an Elvish Mystic. Hidden has a quick turn, as he just plays the Sea of Clouds. Senpai takes 2 for an untapped Underground Tomb. He then plays a Crow Mox and imprints a Culling Ritual.
I'm going to put a Culling Ritual underneath.
Sounds good.
Like to see that underneath the Chromox and not on the stack.
Of course.
He then casts a Soul Ring and ends his turn with a Sylvan Library, to which Hidden responds with the Spell Pierce, as he doesn't want Senpai to be able to refill his hand next turn. Anthony plays a Bayou and uses it for an Ignoble Hierarch. English bolts himself to sack a Bloodstained Mire for an untapped Overgrown Tomb. He casts his commander Grist and upticks the Walker to mill a card and create an insect. Hidden has a Fledged in his land and cracks it for an Underground Sea. He starts ramping with an Arcane Signet into an Esper Sentinel. Senpai draws but is missing lands and passes. Anthony has a Marsh Flash, which is sacked to grab a Badlands. He then follows this up with a Bloom Tender and a Skull Clamp. He gives a card to Hidden and ends his turn there. English enchants his command tower with a Wild Growth. He gives a card to Hidden and upticks Grist to mill a Chatterfang, which is unfortunately not an insect, ending his turn with a Buried Alive.
That does seem scary. Alright, blue
Result.
cards. What you got?
Thank you guys, yeah.
English settles on a Razaketh, Witherbloom Apprentice, and a Destiny Spinner. Hidden casts a Talisman of Progress, and liking it so much he follows it up with a Talisman of Dominance. Senpai is still short on lands and passes once again. Wow.
I mean, I was banking on a 1-lander with the library.
The Sylvan
Yeah.
Gacha.
Yeah,
And it's a one-liner
Yep.
with no blue mana available.
correct.
Yeah.
Mhm. Anthony plays a Wooded Foothills, cracking it to grab a Taiga. Anthony's a little worried about letting English untap with a stack graveyard, but doesn't have much to stop him, and instead uses his mana to cast his commander Tevesh. Hidden gets a draw from his Sentinel, and Anthony ends his turn uptaking Tevesh to gain some Thralls. English untaps, but before he draws, he pays 2 life to cast a Noxious Revival on his Witherbloom. He has a card to Hidden, but the Revival resolves, and English draws and casts the Witherbloom. He then follows this up with a Chain of Smog. He triggers the Apprentice, and responding to this, Hidden swan songs the Chain. And yes, this was a mistake, as Hidden should have let the first copy resolve to empty English's hand before countering the spell. But the spell is countered with English gaining a swan and draining the table. English then downticks his walker to sacrifice an insect to destroy Tevesh. And yes, that's when the table realized that Grist can actually do things other than just mill cards.
Sacrifice a creature, you need to destroy a target creature or planeswalker. Bruh.
Yeah, Grist is
Okay.
really good at controlling other
There's no reason why
commanders.
we
It
cast.
kills other planeswalkers? Dude.
Yeah, it's so
Right, well,
good.
Hidden has a mana conflicts his land, although he's not sure what he should be doing right now. He had originally wanted to cast a Teferi, but doesn't want it to get removed by Grist, and instead cast Tivit, as at least Ward 3 does slow some people down. The Tivit does resolve, and voting begins. Ultimately, Hidden gains 2 treasures and 3 clues. But those treasures don't stay long, as he follows it up with a time sieve. Although Hidden doesn't get to enjoy the moment, as Senpai forces the sieve, exiling a mystical tutor and paying the 1. And that's the end of Hidden's turn.
Sweet, I get to draw and not a land.
It might be a land.
It was a land.
Oh, let's
See?
go.
It even
All
makes
right.
me a land.
Alright, so I will tap this for blue. I'm going to play this
Damages.
Mystic Remora. I'll take a
Hey.
tap.
Nice.
Excellent. Turn 5 or whatever it is, Mystic Remora.
Well, it would have been great if it was turn like 2
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the Southern
no,
Fire.
absolutely.
I passed.
Okay.
Anthony needs to draw some cards and starts by clamping a thrall. He draws and plays a Forest's Land. He then casts a Wishclaw Talisman and gives a card to both Hidden and Senpai. Anthony then activates the claw, giving it to Senpai, and searches out a card. He then follows that up with a Dockside Extortionist, who on ETB gains him 12 treasures. He then uses 5 of them on an Adnos, giving another card to Senpai. But Hidden responds by force of negating it. He exiles a Gilded Drake and gives another card to Senpai. The Adnos is countered, and Anthony then clamps another Thrall to draw 2 more cards. Still hungry for more cards, he sacrifices his Dockside for Village Rites, giving a card to Senpai and drawing 2. He then casts a Survival of the Fittest, giving yet another card to Senpai. I say, well, Senpai, if you weren't in this game, you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anthony then casts an Impulsive Pilferer, which is sacrificed to his clamp, since he's treasure neutral and gains 2 more cards. And with this, Anthony's finally done with his turn. English plays a Blooming Marsh, surprised it still enters untapped, and casts an Eldritch Evolution on his elf. He doesn't pay for either Fish or Esper Sentinel, and also drains the table from his Witherbloom. The evolution does resolve, and English gets an Eternal Witness, which on ETB gets his Chain of Smog back to hand. English then casts the Chain, triggering his Apprentice and giving another card to Senpai. But the Chain resolves, with English discarding 2 cards and copying the spell targeting himself. Now with a copy on the stack, Anthony responds by sacrificing 2 treasures to cast an Abrupt Decay on the Witherbloom. He gives another card to Senpai and Hidden, and English then drains off the now dead Witherbloom. But he still does have his Chain of Smog, which he chooses this time to point at Anthony to have him discard. English was hoping to get a fun combo of discards going, but Anthony decides he wants to keep the rest of his hand and stops the chains there. And what English should have done is point the chains at Senpai, as he's overflowing with cards from his Mystic Remora, and would have continued the chain. Now without any cards left, English upticks Grist for another insect. Although he would have wanted to downtick, the ward actually did stop him from destroying Tivit. Hidden actually gets to untap with his commander and hits the combat. He sends Tivit at Senpai, who takes the hit, and voting happens again, with Hidden gaining 2 treasures and 3 clues. Hidden then goes into the tank. He ultimately decides on a game plan and shocks in a Watery Grave, but passes, with Senpai Tainted Pacting at his end step. He does give a card to Hidden and then starts off by exiling the top. He does stop pretty quickly at an Abrupt Decay. Senpai untaps and pays for his fish. He then casts a Birds of Paradise, following that up with a Ledger Shredder, although he probably should have done that in an opposite order. He ends his turn discarding 2 due to hand size, and for anyone asking, no, he didn't want to use the Witch Claw, as giving it to anyone else probably would have just ended the game there. Anthony casts an Imperial Recruiter. He ends up finding a Tinder Wall, and is in a tough spot. He's worried about Grist, and casts the Tinder Wall. He triggers Senpai's Ledger Shredder, who discards a Ristic to get a counter on the Aven. Anthony then clamps the recruiter to draw 2 more cards and finds a Gaia's Cradle, which he plays as land. English draws for turn and casts an Apprentice Necromancer. This puts English a mana short from down-ticking Grist to remove Tivit, and instead he upticks his Walker for another Insect, with Hidden at his end step cracking 3 clues to draw 3, and then follows that up with a Demonic Consultation. He gives a card to Senpai with Hidden naming Displacer Kitten. He exiles the top 6 with no cat in sight. He then starts exiling until he finds the cat. Notably, he exiles a lot of cards, and unfortunately he exiles his Thassa, but does find the cat. He then goes to his turn and plays a command tower. He grabbed the cat but doesn't have a 0 mana artifact to loop. He does know he needs to go for it and casts Teferi, Time Raveler. He gives a card to Senpai, but the Walker resolves. He then downticks Teferi to bounce his own Arcane Signet and draw a card. He then casts his Displacer Kitten with the Ledger Shredder conniving. Senpai discards a Wishclaw Talisman. That draw actually did find him a Lotus Petal, which would let him now infinitely flicker Teferi to draw a stack. But with the Thassas exiled, Hidden actually needs to win through combat damage now, and as such, he still needs cards left in his library to draw for turn. He first moves to combat and sends Tivit at Anthony, who takes the hit, with the table giving Hidden another 2 treasures and 3 clues. This gives Hidden enough mana to cast an Urza, who on ETB gives him a construct, and now lets him tap his Lotus Petal for mana when he loops it. He taps his construct and the petal for mana to cast the bounced Arcane Signet, giving a card to Senpai. Hidden then triggers his Kitten to flicker the Teferi, who then downticks to bounce the petal, and have Hidden draw. Hidden then starts looping, looking for an answer, and luckily he drew into a Phantasmal Image, which turns into an Eternal Witness to get back his Time Sieve. And along with Tivit and a very large Urza construct, the table scoops it up as Hidden still has enough cards left in his library. Game review. Well, votes are in, and looks like Tivit's the winner. I do think it was probably correct that English should have killed Tivit instead of casting his Apprentice Necromancer, as the table knew Senpai was still holding onto an Abrupt Decay, which would kill the Necromancer before English untaps. Although I do have to give props to English, as he was almost able to go off twice. And the only downside is that Chain of Smog empties your hand regardless of whether or not the combo succeeds. And even if it doesn't, it can be really hard to rebuild after the fact. And speaking of not going off, Anthony was put in a tough spot as his deck is really built around Tevesh being a value engine. And with the onboard removal of Grist, he didn't want to just cast his commander to die the next turn. And as for Senpai, unfortunately, his greedy one-lander didn't pay off. He did have his mana rocks, but was lacking a blue source. And with his Sylvan library countered from Hidden, it really put him out of the game, even if he drew like a million cards later off the fish. But thanks to everyone that played, and I'll see you guys later.
Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you know that we have a TCG affiliate link, and if you ever see a card you want to try or are inspired to brew something new, use our link when purchasing and we'll receive a small portion of the sale. This is a great way to support the channel, and if you enjoyed the gameplay, please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps us keep making videos. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.